Schmidt, take us through what you and your colleagues are reporting and what you think the significance of it is in terms of understanding where Jack Smith's investigation is today.
I think the most important thing to come out of our story and our reporting is that, and look, there's a lot in the story. The thing that we're trying to basically get at is that the issue of the cooperation of Walt Nauta, the person who was around Trump, who was someone that knew something about how the boxes were moved and what was going on behind the scenes at Mar-a-Lago. The fact that they do not have his cooperation is something that has really hurt the investigation, and it has sent them out in many different directions to try and get the information that he could provide to them. This means that they're looking for the footage. This means that they're talking to every person they can at Mar-a-Lago to get their sense of what was going on and what they know about what was moved. This is all trying to fill the hole that was created by the lack of this cooperation. And in the story, we talk about the fact that back many months ago, when the government was trying to get Nauta to cooperate, they had the choice between using a carrot or a stick to get him to cooperate. And they basically essentially sent the message that they could charge him. And at that point, that shut him down. And the government stopped having his cooperation and still doesn't have it today, and is still apparently searching to understand what was it that happened with these boxes? How were they moved? Why were they moved? When were they moved? At whose behest were they moved? Those are many things that Walt Nauta can answer that the feds do not have his full cooperation on.
So, Mike, if this one witness, Mr. Nauta, is obstructing that part of the investigation and causing them to essentially subpoena everybody who works at Mar-a-Lago, and they have some of this conduct on the surveillance footage, which I believe DOJ's own filings suggest they do, why not charge Mr. Nauta?
Well, that's one of the questions, is that what is going on in this investigation beside, like, in terms of like what charges they may bring at some point, and will they try to use charges to work from the bottom up. So far in this investigation, it's been largely a grand jury investigation with some big overt investigative moves like executing a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. But what we don't know and what remains to be seen is how much will the Justice Department try and use its prosecutorial powers, its ability to charge people, to work up that ladder, to try and get that. And how much do they need to do that? If they really thought they needed Walt Nauta and they thought that they had to charge him to get his cooperation in order to indict Donald Trump, and this is all a hypothetical, that is something that could take a fair amount of time to do and to move forward with, to try and get that. So I think what the government is trying to do is to try and fill that hole in with other things, with the surveillance footage, with other witnesses, with these confidential photos they have obtained. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get around the fact that they don't have this key witness.
Mike, there's something, you're right, it is I suggest everyone go read it. It is a story with lots of twists and turns and lots of information in it. This was one of the most intriguing things. You and your colleagues report this, quote, one of the previously unreported subpoenas to the Trump Organization sought records pertaining to Trump's dealings with a Saudi-backed professional golf venture known as Live Golf, which is holding tournaments at some of Trump's golf resorts. It's unclear what bearing Trump's relationship with Live Golf has on the broader investigation, but it suggests that the prosecutors are examining certain elements of Trump's family business. What are the theories on why Jack Smith is interested in Trump's dealings with the Saudi-backed golf venture?
So as a reporter, this is never a satisfying thing to say about your own story and story that I've done with my colleagues, but it's one of the great mysteries of the story. What is it that this subpoena is about? What is it that they're looking for? On the face of it, it is tantalizing. It is very curious. What is it about Trump's relationship, his financial relationship with Live Golf? We know that some of the Live Golf tournaments have been scheduled to be played at Trump courses. They may have already been played there. I'm not sure, but we know that there is a relationship there. And what is this? Is this directly part of something directly related to the documents? What is it about? It's very tantalizing. And We took it as far as we could take it, and we thought it was an important piece of information to put out there. But at the end of the day, we do not know what specifically they're looking for.
The beating heart of the new reporting, though, seems to be the reporting about a confidential witness at Mar-a-Lago. Tell us what your understanding is of how that balances out your reporting about Walt Nauta. Is this person able to close the loop or answer some of those questions now sort of in the Walt Nauta black box?
Maybe. We know that they have the cooperation of this confidential witness. We know that this witness had provided the authorities with some type of photo that was taken from inside of Mar-a-Lago. And it seems to be, from our reporting, that the cooperation of this person has been done in a way to try and protect this person. We know that it is very difficult, or it has been, or those around Donald Trump have struggled to fully cooperate with different investigations over the years. It seems like the government has tried to obtain this information in a way to protect this individual. Now, if they were to go to trial and this was a key piece of evidence, they wouldn't be able to do that. But it seems like someone was able to provide the investigators with some sort of insight in the form of a photo into what it looked like inside of Mar-a-Lago at a critical time that they were trying to figure out were these boxes being moved around and what was going on with the documents.